not. Hare Krishna. So I am broadcasting now. I just want to make sure I'm online because I'm broadcasting now from my computer rather than from my phone. And I'm just going to double check to make sure that I am online. Hold on a second. Yes, I am. Okay, so we promised everyone Ram Kata. Make sure that I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so Om Gana Timirandasha Galanchana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tosmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I promise everyone we do some Ram Kata every night. It's a little later tonight. Tomorrow night it's going to be earlier. And so what we do tonight is something very interesting. I was reading the Ramayana today, the Valmiki Ramayana, and I came across a very wonderful section. And this section was, let me give a little background on this. Right now, we're not going to be doing this from people's homes because we're in sort of like an isolation type mood just to protect the devotees from the coronavirus so they don't mix with each other. So, anyway, let's tell a little bit of the story. So, what's happening where I'm reading right now in the Valmiki Ramayana is that Hanuman has been looking for Sita. Finally, he spies her in the Ashok Grove. And when he spies her, just practically at the moment when he's spying her, being surrounded by all these Rakshasinis with horrible visages, like stomachs with heads coming out of the stomach and noses coming from the forehead, then at that particular juncture, Hanuman sees something very unusual, more unusual than the Rakshasinis. And what he sees is this person named Ravan who's coming to basically convince Sita to have a relationship with him. Now, a little background on this is that Ravana is love struck with Sita. Now, you may say, oh, that's so sweet. I don't think it's so sweet. What it actually is that he's suffering because one who is in lust suffers tremendously. Actually, Ravana's whole existence is suffering. Lust does that to you. It actually makes one suffer tremendously. Aritam Ganametena Ganino Nishavayana Kamrupena Kontya Dushparena Analenacha. The Bhagavad Gita describes that one is never satisfied and one is burned by one's eternal enemy, which is known as lust. And that is what Ravana is suffering from. So it's not that he's enjoying at this point because he's madly in love. And of course, what doesn't he realize is if you're madly in love and try to kidnap Lakshmi Sita Devi, you get Durga. Durga means to go or to move with great difficulty, as Prabhupada would sometimes give a sort of interpretation of the word Durga. It means the prison warden. And we know Durga is seated on a tigress. And Durga has this trident, a Trishura, which signifies the threefold miseries, Adhyatmic, Adibodhic, and Adidaivic miseries. Miseries from one's body and mind, miseries from the material nature, and miseries from other living entities. So at the point that Ravan kidnaps Sita Devi, he begins to suffer from Durga's punishments. What do I mean by that? First of all, he's fallen in love and he can't do anything about it. And then after that, some monkey comes and sets fire to his whole city with his tail. And that's very embarrassing. And even previously, of course, Ravan was captured by Bali and put under Bali's armpit. And Bali went all over the place with Ravana under his armpit. So, but after Robin kidnaps Sita Devi, he's madly in love with her. Then he suffers even more. What happens? His brother neglects him. Vibhishan goes and joins the enemy. And then gradually Robin sees all of his sons die, culminating with Indrajit, his favorite son. And Ravana is just insulted along the way. For example, one time he's fighting with Ram, and he gets defeated by Ram, and Ram says to him, "You look a little tired. You better go and rest a little bit." And so this, as Krishna says in the Gita, for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. So for Ravan, who's definitely controlled by passion, of course ignorance too, but a primary motive is passion. Controlled by passion, he's completely uh, depressed, being insulted by Ram. So anyway, this is what happens when one tries to enjoy the material energy, thinking it's Lakshmi without Narayan or Krishna. One gets Durga. So at the particular juncture of the story that I'm going to read tonight, Robin is trying to convince Sita Devi to voluntarily embrace him. And he's doing this not simply to trick Sita Devi, but he's doing it because he actually is feeling this intense desire to enjoy her, which is burning his heart. Try to remember this as you're watching or hearing this. So, this is the Valmiki Ramayana. For those of you who want to know the actual Ramayana, this is the Valmiki Ramayana. So, thereupon, Ravana approached Sita, who was helpless, surrounded by female Rakshasas, and vowed to a life of austerity, that's Sita Devi, of course, and with sweet words and courteous gestures, he said to her, "O thou, whose thighs resemble the trunk of an elephant, who beholding me dost seek to conceal thy breasts and thy body, as if thou didst fear me. O lady of large eyes, I love thee. Be gracious to me. O thou of charming looks, who is adored by all the world, there's no man present here, nor any Rakshasa able to change his form at will. Therefore banish the fear which I inspire in thee. O Sita, it has been ever the unquestioned and special privilege of Rakshasas to unite themselves with the wives of others, either taking them of their own free will or bearing them away by force. In spite of this, O Maitali, I shall not lay hands on thee, since thou hast no affection for me, but for myself. I am completely under thy sway. Therefore, trust in me and respond to my love. O goddess, have no fear of me, take courage, O dear one, and do not let thyself be consumed with grief. To wear but a single plate, to lie on the earth in soiled attire, and fast unnecessarily does not become thee. In my company, O Maitili, do thou enjoy garlands, perfumes, sandal, ornaments, wine, rich beds and seats, singing, dancing, and music. Thou art a pearl among women. Do not remain in this condition. Adorn thyself as heretofore, having united thyself with me, O lady of lovely form. What will not be thine? Thine enchanting youth is passing away, which, like the water of a river once gone, does not return. O thou of fair looks, the creator of thy loveliness, Vishvakarma, after devising thee, ceased from his work, for I see none who is equal to thee in loveliness and grace. So notice that Raman, he's quite poetic. Sometimes you depict Rakshasas as completely, let's say, uncouth, to use a word. I mean, no, let's see how to put that in common English, having no good manners. But he knows how to use good manners. He's never had a lady refuse him before. Because before this, Hanuman has gone through his ladies' ashram, or the place of Ravana's wives, and each and every one of these girls, there's thousands of them, accepted him voluntarily. because he was so handsome, rich, famous, anything any woman would fall in love with. So this is the first lady who's refused his advances. Hmm, remember? Who, having seen thee resplendent with beauty, could withstand thee, O Vaidehi? Even Brahma himself is moved. How much more other beings? O thou whose countenance resembles the moon, on whatever part of thy body mind's eye rest, my gaze is riveted. O mightily, do thou become my consort and renounce this thy folly. Become the foremost queen of these innumerable lovely women who belong to me. O timid one, all the treasure I have won throughout the worlds, I offer to thee, as also my kingdom. O sportive damsel, for thy sake, having subjugated the entire earth with its many cities, I will confer them upon King Janaka. None on this earth can withstand my prowess. Behold my immeasurable valor in battle. Did not the celestials and demons find me irresistible on the battlefield as I broke through their ranks, shattering their standards? Standards, of course, means flags. Therefore, yield to my desire, and attire thyself in splendid robes, letting brilliant gems adorn thy person. O timid one, enjoy every comfort and luxury according to thy pleasure, divert thyself, and distribute land and treasure to others. Live happily, depending on my support, and exercise supreme authority. By my favor, all the relatives shall share thy felicity. Felicity, of course, means happiness. Observe my prosperity and glory, O gentle lady. What canst thou hope from Ram, who is clothed in robes of bark? O fortunate one! Ram has been deprived of his kingdom and is bereft of his might. He practices asceticism. His couch is the bare earth. Indeed, it is doubtful whether he still lives. O Vaidehi, Ram will never be able to find thee. Thou who resemblest the star veiled by dark clouds, preceded by cranes. Raghava will never rescue thee from my hands, as Hiranyakashipu was not able to recover his consort Kirti, who had fallen under the sway of Indra. O lady of sweet smiles, O thou of lovely teeth and beautiful eyes, thou dost ravish my heart as Suparna carried away a serpent. Suparna, of course, is Garuda. Although thy robe is torn and stained, and thou art stripped of ornaments, seeing thee my mind turns away from all my other consorts. O daughter of Janaka, do thou hold sway over all the other women in my harem, who are endowed with every accomplishment. O princess of raven locks, that means black hair. These women, the foremost amongst the beauties of the world, shall be thy slaves and attend on thee as the Apsaras attend on Shri. O graceful princess, enjoy the pleasures of the world with me, and the riches of Kuvera to the utmost of thy desires. O goddess, neither in asceticism, strength, prowess, wealth, nor fame is Ram equal to me. Therefore, drink, eat, enjoy thyself, and indulge in every pleasure. I shall confer on thee immense wealth, nay, the whole world. Do thy satisfy all thy desires in my company, O timid one, and let thy relatives share thy felicity also. Adorn with dazzling golden bracelets. O beautiful one, in my company range in the groves of flowering trees on the shores of the sea where the black bees hum. And now, Sita's response. Hearing the words of that terrible Rakshasa, Sita, overwhelmed with grief, answered in a faint and feeble voice. The unfortunate Sita, afflicted and trembling, faithful to her lord, and anxious to preserve her virtue, her heart fixed on Ram, placed a straw between Ravana and herself, and with a sweet smile answered him, saying, Take thy heart and set it on thine own consorts. As a sinner may not aspire to heaven, so shouldst thou not expect to win me. That which would never be done and is condemned in a woman faithful to her Lord, I shall never do. Born in a noble house, I have ever been joined to a pious family. Having spoken thus to Ravan, the virtuous Vaidehi turning her back on him. This is actually an insult to the poor guy. Almost feel sorry for Robin at this particular point. Uh, she continued, "It is not meet that I become the wife, since I am united to another. Do thy duty and follow the rules laid down by men of integrity, the wives of others like thine own, and deserving of protection, O prowler of the night. Do thou furnish a good example and enjoy thine own consorts. That wretch who in inconstancy and levity of his heart is not satisfied with his own wives will be brought to misery by those of others. Either no pious men exist here, or thou dost not follow their example, since thy mind is perverse and turns from what is virtuous, or the wise having uttered sage counsel, thou to the destruction of the Rakshasas dost ignore them." Notice there's a lot of Old English here, not a tremendous amount. In the Gita Press edition of the Ramayana, the Valmiki Ramayana, there's a lot more Old English. This has a little bit of Old English. Prosperity, kingdom, and city are all brought to naught in the hands of a virtuous monarch who is not master of himself. Hence Lanka, overflowing with treasure, having thee for a king, will suffer destruction before long. O Ravan, that wicked being who brings about his own downfall, succumbs to the delight of all. When thou meetest with thine end, this evil deed will cause the oppressed to say, "Fortunate are we that this great tyrant has fallen. Thou art not able to tempt me with wealth and riches, as the light of the sun cannot be separated from the sun. So do I belong to Raghava. Having rested on the arm of that Lord of men, how should I depend on any other? Like unto the spiritual truth known to a Brahmin faithful to his vows, I belong to the Lord of the world alone, and I am lawfully wedded to him. It is to thine own advantage to restore me to Ram, wretched as I am, like unto a she-elephant anxiously awaiting her mate in the forest. It behooveth thee to seek Ram's friendship, that lion amongst men. If thou desireth to preserve Lanka, and dost not wish to bring about thine own destruction, he is wise, conversant with every duty, and ever eager to preserve those who seek his protection. Form an alliance with him. If thou desirest to survive, seek to conciliate Ram, who is full of devotion to those who take refuge of him, and humbly conduct me to him once more. If thou dost bring me back to the greatest of the Raghavas, thy well-being is assured, but if thou dost act otherwise, thou art doomed. Thou mayest evade the thunderbolt of Indra, even death himself may overlook thee, but there will be no refuge for thee from the fury of Raghava, that lord of men. When thou dost hear the terrible twanging of Brahma's bow, resembling the thunderbolt hurled by Indra, soon shall those arrows bearing the impress of Ram and Lakshman like serpents with flaming jaws penetrate Lanka, and those shafts decorated with Chiron's plumes shall cover the whole city, annihilating all the Rakshasas. As Vainateya, that's Garuda again, bears away great reptiles, so shall that eagle Ram speedily bear away the Rakshasas. And like unto Vishnu, wrestling the radiant tree from the Asuras by covering the worlds, in 3 strides, so shall my Lord, the destroyer of his foes, recover me from thee. This cowardly deed has been perpetuated by thee in order to revenge thyself for the destruction of Janashtan and the hosts of the Rakshasas. In the absence of these 2 brothers, those lions among men who had gone forth hunting, didst thou carry me away, O vile wretch? Remember, she keeps insulting him. He's never been insulted a day in his life. I mean, I just feel so sorry for Ravan at this point. But dog that thou art, thou didst not stand before those tigers, Ram and Lakshman. Wealth and friends will be of no avail to thee in conflict with them, and thou shalt be defeated in the one-handed as the one-handed Vritra who entered into combat with the two-handed Indra. Soon shall my protector Ram speedily bear away the Rakshasas, accompanied by Somatri, that's Lakshman, of course, and he will draw out thy life's breaths as the sun with its rays dries up shallow water. Whether thou takest refuge in the abode of Kuvera or terrified descendest into Varuna's realm, thou shalt assuredly perish, struck down by the son of Dasarath, like a mighty tree felled by lightning. This is amazing speech. This is Valmiki Ramayana, very poetic, even in English. To this speech from the gracious Sita, the king of the Rakshasas replied harshly, Ah, in the world it is said that the more gentleness one manifests towards a woman, the more responsive she becomes, but the more kindness I show to thee, the more thou dost repulse me. Verily, only the love I bear thee restrains my wrath as a skillful charioteer controls the horses who seek to leave the road. Mighty indeed is the power of love. For even if the object of his affection invokes his anger, man covers her with pity and tenderness. It is on this account, O lady of lovely mien, that I do not slay thee. Thou dost merit death and dishonor, thou who delightest in asceticism without reason. For each and every harsh word which thou hast addressed to me, thou meritest a dreadful end, O mightily. Having spoken thus to Sita, the princess of Videha, Ravana, lord of the Rakshasas, filled with indignation, added this: I shall grant thee 2 months as the term assigned to thee, after which thou must share my bed. If thou shouldest refuse, my cook shall mince thy limbs for my morning breakfast. Hearing these threats, addressed by the king of the Rakshasas to Janaki, the daughters of the gods and Gandharvas were exceedingly perturbed, and by the expression of their lips and eyes and their gestures sought to reassure Sita, and thus menaced by him. Encouraged by them, Sita fortified her virtue and her pride in Ram, addressed Ravana, the lord of the Titans, in his own interest, saying, Sita, of course, speaking, It appears that there is none in this city who desires thy welfare and therefore seeks to prevent thee from this despicable deed. Who in the 3 worlds would desire to possess the chaste consort of the high-souled one who resembles Indra's Sachi? O vilest of demons, how wilt thou escape the consequences of this insult offered to Rama's consort, he whose valor is immeasurable? Like unto an infuriated elephant encountering a hare in the forest, so shall thou, the wretched hare, meet with that elephant Ram. Thou dost not fear to rail at the chief of the Ikshvakus so long as thou art not in his presence. Why do not those cruel, terrible, coppery eyes of thine fall out, looking on me so lustfully, O ignoble creature? O contemptible wretch! When thou didst threaten the spouse of that high-souled Ram, the daughter-in-law of King Dasarath, why did not thy tongue dry up? O 10-headed one, or 10-necked one, it says here, by the power of my asceticism, I could reduce thee to ashes instantly, had I Rama's mandate. On account of my consuming virtue and ascetic observances, I could never have been wrested from Ram were it not that thine evil act was to be the cause of thy destruction, O Dasagriva. Assisted by the brother of Kuvera and proud of thine own heroism, thou didst lure Ram from the hermitage and succeed in bearing me away by stealth. Hearing Sita's words, Ravana, the king of the Titans, cast ferocious glances at her, like a mass of black clouds, with his enormous arms and neck endowed with an elephant gait, his eyes smoldering, his tongue like a darting snake's tongue, of immense stature, wearing a plumed diadem, that means a crown, covered with necklaces, sprinkled with perfume, decked with garlands and bracelets of gold, his waist encircled with a dark blue belt, so that it resembled the Mandara mountain encompassed by the snake at the time of the churning of the ocean. With his vast arms, the lord of the Rakshasas looked like a mountain with twin peaks. Adorned with earrings gleaming like the rising sun, he resembled a hill between two Ashok trees, enveloped in crimson flowers and buds, or like the wish-fulfilling tree of spring incarnate, or an altar in a crematorium. Then Ravan cast furious glances from his bloodshot eyes at the princess of Videha, and hissing like a serpent addressed her, saying, O thou who art attached to that wretch without resource or moral sense, I shall destroy thee today, as the sun's radiance is obliterated at the time of dusk. Having spoken thus to Maitali, Ravana, the oppressor of his foes, looked at those female Rakshasas of formidable appearance. Some of whom, this is an interesting description, had one eye, a single eye, or ear, some enormous ears, and some the ears of elephants. Some had ears that hung down, and some none at all. Some had the feet of elephants. Some had the feet of horses. Some were hairy. Others possessed, but others had enormous feet, and others none at all. Some had heads and necks of inordinate size, that means big size. Some enormous chests and bellies. Some disproportionately large mouths and eyes, or long tongues and nails. And some had no nose, or possessed jaws like lions. Some had mouths like oxen, or snouts like pigs. Then Ravana, transfixing those Rakshasas with his glance, said to them, Ye Rakshasas, seek by fair or foul means, by threats or persuasion, or honeyed words or gifts, to induce Sita to look on me with favor. Repeating his command again and again, the king of the Titans, filled with desire and anger, began to inveigh against Janaki, whereupon a female Titan, that is Rakshasa, named Ganya Malini, approaching Dasagriva, embraced him and said, O great king, enjoy thyself with me. What need hast thou for this human being who is wretched and whose countenance is pale? O king of the Rakshasas, it is not with her that the gods have destined thee to taste the exquisite pleasure of the reward of the strength of thine arms. He who loves one who is unwillingly exposes himself to torment, whereas she whose love is reciprocated enjoys perfect happiness. Having said this, the female Rakshasa drew Ravana away, but he, resembling a mass of cloud, turned back, laughing scornfully. Then Dasagriva strode away, causing the earth to tremble, and returned to his palace that shone with the brilliance of the orb of day. Surrounding Ravana, the daughters of the gods and Gandharvas, as well as those of the serpent race, returned to that sumptuous abode with him. Thus Ravana, distracted with desire, left the princess of Mithila of irreproachable virtue trembling, and entered his own dwelling. So maybe we can read a little more. This is really, to me, this is really nectar, because these are the words of Valmiki. And Valmiki is a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So by hearing this, I'm associating with the pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and connecting with Ram. Actually, when we read these things in the Ramayana, we should, in our mind's eye, using our imagination and our ability to picture things, we should picture what's going on. We should actually see Ravan doing his thing, threatening Sita Devi, and Sita Devi rejecting Ravana. And when we read with that particular mood, the Ramayana will actually be present in our hearts. As described by Lord Kapila Dev, Bhavanti Ritkarna Rasayana Katata Joshanadasya Pavargavartmani Shradavra Tiruvakti Anukramishati. that when we let the transcendental sound vibrations, which actually have the dust particles of the lotus feet of the Lord, enter our hearts from the pure devotees, then we automatically, Bhavanti Ritkarna Rasayana Kata, we proceed on the path of liberation to Joshadashu up of our Vartmani. And gradually we get what Shraddha, Ratira Bhakti, Anukramishati, that faith, taste, and ultimately pure love of God follow one after the other. This is the real point of Krishna consciousness. As we mentioned, actually, I've been mentioning the last few days, the real point of Krishna consciousness is to have a taste. Vasudeva, Kata Ruchi, a taste for hearing the pastimes of the Lord, a taste for serving the Lord, and ultimately a taste for chanting Krishna's names. And if we don't have a taste for these things, if we're just engaged in mental speculation, philosophical word jugglery, or whatever, then Shrama Evi Kevalam, we're not making much progress in devotional service. So anyway, I think we're going to end a little early tonight. It's not early, actually, but we're going to start earlier tomorrow night in our Ramayana recitation. And please all enjoy this. This is the Valmiki Ramayana, the authorized Ramayana, the original Ramayana, the Ramayana that was written or spoken or remembered because Lord Brahma and Narada Muni instructed Valmiki to recite this Ramayana. And Valmiki was able to picture all of Ram's pastimes by chanting the names of Ram. And if we chant the names of Ram or chant the names of Krishna, then we can also see all these pastimes in our hearts of hearts. As Prabhupada commented, we have a spiritual television, we just don't know how to turn it on or adjust the channels at this particular point. He said, pure devotees have spiritual televisions. They can tune in to any of the Lord's pastimes they want and perceive and partake of the Lord's pastimes. So this is Krishna consciousness. Hearing, chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Everything begins with hearing, Shravanam. And then when you hear nicely, you will speak nicely. Okay, so thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll start a little earlier. And I don't know what part of the Ramayana we're going to deal with tomorrow, but we'll deal with some part of the Ramayana. We're coming upon Ram Navami. And we are here in Nadi on Fiji. We're more or less, I wouldn't say isolated with some devotees, but for protecting the devotees and myself from the coronavirus, we're here right across the street from the airport, waiting for a plane to take us to America, which may not happen for the next few weeks, but at the same time, we've been interacting with so many devotees during the day. Okay. All glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.